Hello everyone, on behalf of Dr. Scott Petrie, I'd like to welcome you back to the MOOC. In Module 2 we'll be looking at instructional shifts, Common Core State Standards, and the C3 framework. We'll also be looking at inquiry-based lessons on how they can be done with younger students, how often you should do inquiry-based lessons, and how much guidance you should provide. Let's start off with a quote from David Coleman, the current president of the College Board. And at the time that he said this, he was one of the key players in the development of the Common Core State Standards. There is no such thing as doing the nuts and bolts of reading in kindergarten through 5th grade without coherently developing knowledge in science and history and arts. Period. It is false. It is fiction. And that is why the NAEP scores in the early grades can improve slightly but collapse as students grow older. Because it is the deep foundation and rich knowledge and vocabulary depth that allows you to access more complex text. Let's not get confused here that the Common Core State Standards are adding back nice things like history, arts, and science that are an addendum to literacy. We are adding back the cornerstones of literacy, which are the foundations of knowledge that make literacy happen. Now let's look at the focus questions for Module 2. How do the Common Core Standards for English Language Arts impact the social studies? How does the C3 framework change the structure and delivery of social studies lessons? What is or should be the primary guide for instruction in your social studies classroom? And finally, how much guidance do students need to successfully complete an inquiry-based lesson? Next, let's look at the instructional shifts for the social studies. The Common Core State Standards set requirements for English language arts and provide guidance for literacy, for history, and the social studies. In addition to aligning curriculum and lessons to your state learning standards for social studies teachers are expected to integrate reading, writing, speaking, listening, and research skills as outlined in the areas of informational text and writing for the ELA Common Core Standards for grades K through 5, and at grades 6 through 12, the literacy standards for history and social studies. Key Common Core literacy shifts include increase in text complexity, academic vocabulary, balancing informational and literacy text, focus on disciplinary literacy, evaluating sources and using evidence, and writing from sources. Social studies students will be assessed in the area of reading informational text, writing, speaking, listening, and research through research simulations on the PARCC Language Arts Assessment. This reinforces the need for all teachers to teach literacy skills in their classrooms. Some states, like my home state of Ohio, will assess students in social studies at the elementary, middle, and high school level with state-developed social studies assessments modeled after the new PARCC or Smarter Balance assessment. The College Career and Civic Life Framework is a publication of the National Council for the Social Studies and is a product of the collaboration between college professors, state social studies leaders, and social studies related organizations. In the module, we'll hear Dr. Kathy Swan provide an overview of the C3 framework. The C3 framework inquiry arc includes 4 dimensions. The first dimension is developing questions and planning inquiries. The second dimension is applying disciplinary tools and concepts, and this ties in nicely to our discussion in Module 1 about disciplinary skills. Dimension 3, evaluating sources and using evidence, is a tie to the Common Core State Standards, where students will be required to gather and evaluate sources, develop claims, and use evidence. Dimension 4, communicating conclusions and taking informed action, is the culmination of the inquiry arc. Here, the students are going to conclude their inquiry and communicate their conclusions, and at the highest level of completing the inquiry arc is taking informed action based on what you've learned. Here are key C3 framework shifts. Craft questions that spark and sustain an inquiry. Cultivate and nurture collaborative civic spaces. Integrate content and skills purposefully. Promote literacy practices and outcomes. Provide tangible opportunities for taking informed action. If you're looking for resources and information on how you can incorporate the C3 framework in your classroom, go to C3 Teachers, where you can find teacher blogs that you can follow, and check out what they're doing in New York with the New York Social Studies Toolkit. The last thing we want to touch on in Module 2 is inquiry-based lessons. How young we can start with inquiry-based lessons, how often we need to do inquiry-based lessons to find that balance in our own classrooms. I wanted to start out with a look at a popular television program from the 90s and early 2000s, which is Blue's Clues. And if you look at the structures of Blue's Clues and their inquiry approach, they start off with a question. They look for at least 3 clues. At the end, they corroborate their information by sitting in the thinking chair, and then they share out their final conclusion. This shows that students, even at the preschool age, can do inquiry-based lessons. The next inquiry-based lesson program I wanted to highlight is the Self-Organized Learning Environment by Sugata Mitra. He was the TED Prize winner from a few years ago. And what he does in the SOUL method is lay out a big idea question and puts students, 3 or 4 students, around a computer, tell them what they want to produce, in this case a PowerPoint presentation, and let them go. So this is one of the things I wanted folks to look at as we determine how much guidance do we need to provide students through the inquiry process, and how much do we need to coach them. I wanted to end this module with a quote from Mike Schmoker and his book Focus, Elevating the Essentials. Mike says, "I honestly believe that social studies could be on the cusp of its greatest moment. That is, could soon be a subject students come to love and look forward to. But to ensure that happens, we must infuse generous amounts of current and historical text into students' weekly social studies diet. Such documents should include primary source documents, alternative histories, and also current issues and events found in newspapers and magazine articles. These should be introduced no later than the upper elementary grades. Such supplemental text could be a real game changer with a profound impact on students' sense of what history is and how it connects to their personal lives, culture, and communities." This is a nice transition for us as we look toward Module 3, which will be about historical thinking and the reading like a historian approach. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you online.